In this video, I'm sad to announce we'll take a look at one of Ellen's very few losses recently. She played with the white pieces against Edvin Trost, and or I'm not sure how to pronounce that name. Please forgive me, but we'll take a look at the game in the fifth round, from the fifth round of Uppsala Young Champions. And Ellen, true to her style, played some very dynamic stuff here, faced with the King's Indian defense. She did not shy away from complicated variations. Bishop g5, I guess the Averbach variation, knight a6, queen d2. And this is of course not so common these days, but a very nice variation to know with white. Quite complicated. Bishop d1 to make room for the knight, as you want it on e2, not on f3, because very often you want to play f3 to counter f5 with f3 to basically just halt black's initiative or attack on the king's side. So that's the white's strategy. Knight h5. I've only played bishop h5 here a couple of times in blitz, which is a perfectly fine alternative for white. Positionally, white's position is desirable. Even though you give up the bishop here, you get a advantageous pawn structure. You could always, of course, play bishop h6 to trade off black's bishop on g7 in case you're afraid of the bishop pair, and move your knight to e2, play f3 castles, and so forth, and play on the queen side after a while, with of course moves like this. So that's basically a strategy for white. Ellen plays slightly more complicated, but perhaps even better with knight g2, f5. But now I think the thematic move is f3. Please correct me, you guys, if I'm mistaken, but f3 is, at least to my eyes, quite logical here. Even though the computer likes e takes f5, so that's probably Ellen's preparation as well. She played it at least confidently. Gf, bishop c2, knight b4, and then it looks like black gets at least some King's Indian defense type of play here, sacrificing a pawn in the middle of the board here, and then going f4. I don't really believe in black's compensation here, but I can really understand that it might look a bit uncomfortable with bishop f5, perhaps f3 coming, and you haven't even managed to castle yet. But this is a very good time to castle. I'm not talking short castle, because then being hit by f3 would be really uncomfortable, I would think. So castling long is my suggestion in this position, and then getting your knight to d4 and trying to stabilize the position. Remember that even after bishop f5 and queen g6, your bishop could always go to h4. It will be reasonably safe there, and a move like queen g6, queen g2 would not be recommendable, because that would always open up the g file, and that's always advantageous for white in these kinds of lines. Ellen chose f3, which is very understandable and reasonable. Bishop f5, queen d2, queen g6, and now she played g4, which looks more than fine. It's a fork, and if black takes en passant, then you protect your bishop, right? So in this line, this was not played. It looks like white is holding everything together, but the not very dogmatic move bishop takes c3 is actually almost winning for black after the very calm rook a8, and white's position is just falling apart. The king is has nowhere to go, because king f2 trying to protect everything here. Bishop g4, the rook is also participating here, f4, and then queen g5, and it's all over. So the king is in huge trouble here. However, Ellen's opponent played queen g5, and now this works like a dream, because she can play h4, queen g6, and in this position white is better with long castle to follow. I'm just going to make a quick note of an improvement for white here. Instead of g4, which was actually losing, long castles would do the trick with the same point as Ellen actually played in the game g4, but now taking is not possible because of the pin. So Ellen found the right idea, but the right execution was very difficult to find. So that's very understandable. G4 is a very picturesque move, very cool move to make. And in the game, it worked perfectly fine because after queen g2, long castles, white is just in time. And in this position, even though black's pawn is on e3, which might be dangerous in some positions, white has everything under perfect control. The rooks are doing a phenomenal job, the knights are blockading the pawn, and this one is also very strong. So even though the position is materially balanced, white is doing very well here. King h8, knight going to b5, perhaps there were other moves, but I like this approach. Then getting the knight to the center, c6. We take this one, rook c8, and now knight e6 was played. f6 was actually a move here. Knight takes f6, knight e6, and now c7, cb7 is also possible. And if rook takes c6, knight g7 actually wins a full piece because g1 is protected, and this would win for white. So f6 is very difficult to find. You can of course flick through the other variations here if you'd like, but in case of this is still the point, threatening the bishop, and also cb7 is also a threat. So f6 just diverting the knight away from protecting the bishop would win Ellen the game instead of knight e6, which is a good move, but it doesn't give white anything more than a slight advantage. Rook c6, b3, rook c8, couple of more moves, and in this position I would probably suggest playing something like king b2. Just to get out of this terrible pin along the c-file. Ellen chose knight c3, which is a perfectly sound idea in this position, controlling d5, maybe going to b5, maybe getting the king to e2 to eat up this, gobble up this pawn. But now she was hit with d5, and suddenly black is taking over the initiative. Probably a huge time scramble here. We are now in move 34, rook d1, after taking on c4, and rook g to c7. Instead of fighting on with something like rook d6, white played knight b5, but that allows rook takes c4 with a check, and now king has to move to b1, and e2 is coming as well. And if you do something like rook e1, black could even play rook c1, just getting rid of any protection, and then from the e1 square, and then promoting with the pawn, which of course would win immediately. Ellen chose this move, but was hit with the same move, the same method, and even though this last-ditch attempt with knight d6 is very cute, rook c6, for example, chasing the knight away would actually be a kind of smothered mate with a combination of knight and rook. But instead rook f8 is a real party pooper, and in this position Ellen chose to resign. Understandably, a very complicated and tense game, a lot of calculation, a lot of sharp stuff, could have gone either way. Sadly Ellen lost this one, but she'll be back in one of our next videos with some good results. So please check out the other videos on our channel, and I'll see you guys later.